Fear and Hunger doesn't have a lot of characters, but it makes each character count. The game's writing is extremely tight, so even with only a few lines of dialogue, you can get a strong grasp of most of them. It wears its heart on its sleeve with the basic stuff. Everyone had a scary and hungry life. Everything sucks. But there's still joy to be found in spite of it. Even though the mercenary has spent life killing and stealing, he still comes to the dungeon with inspiration and hope for a better life. There's an exception, though. The girl you find in the cage has no inspiration, no hope, just the fear and hunger that unite everyone. I'd like to talk about that, but first, this is your spoiler warning. I'm going to talk about the deepest pits this game has to offer, and a little bit about the sequel as well. If that doesn't scare you off, then here we go. Fear and Hunger has a lot of endings. There's basically 9 endings in the first game, and at least 3 in the second. The game ranks them by letter, but the first doesn't seem to mean the best. Endings A and B involve you dying in a pit, while endings C and D let you escape alive. The reason A is first is because it's the only ending that really changes anything for people. It's the only ending that involves the girl. You'll first find the girl in the cage on floor 1. She's covering her face, she's crying, and she won't pay any attention to you. We don't know all the details, but the cage isn't new for her. Her life has sucked for a long time, and she might have even been kept in the dungeon for that whole time. She'll finally notice you if you rescue her from the cage. The rescue isn't even much better for her. She's a party member outside the cage, and that leaves her just as screwed up as the rest of your party is. The dungeons drive her mad. Monsters attack her. And because she's the weakest party member, you might even save food by feeding her less than the rest of your party. She won't even talk, but she'll follow you around just out of necessity, at first at least. In spite of all this is still better than how things were before. Just the care you put into keeping her alive improves her mood dramatically. If you keep talking to her, she'll cheer up a bit. With time, she may even reply. All this because you found a useless doll on the ground and gave it to her. Or a knife. Or just because you refused to sell her for a claymore. She appreciates any bit of care you give her, and it's sad to see how new it is to her. Who would lock up a kid like that? She might just be a girl to us, but to the gods, she's a scheme. See, Nilvan is a new god. He's a human who descended to a temporary but weak status of godhood. She has the soul of the endless, a soul that shows her ambition, and she thinks that humans can do anything, even create a real god. She shares this goal with a regular human dude named Lagarde. He's hot, ambitious, and even if he doesn't know about Nilvan's plan for sure, he knows humanity needs another god. So, they bang, and they create the girl. But they don't just need a girl with the soul of a god. They need her to be tough enough to carry humanity. So they make their daughter suffer. They leave her in the dungeon to try to toughen her up. That didn't necessarily work as they meant, though. The girl's just as scared as the rest of your party, and I guess that's impressive for a kid, but she can't even talk. Lagarde's pretending to be an amnesiac, so he won't even acknowledge his kid. Nilvan, though, doesn't really care how the girl is doing. She'll just ask you to finish her plan. So, whether you mean to or not, let's say you do carry out Nilvan's plan. You take the girl into the corpse of an old god, the god of the depths. You take her to the bottom, a mess of gore and bodies. And then... This isn't going well for the girl, is it? The girl twists and writhes as I start stabbing her for no reason. Her body is changing. Unable to resist, she tries to stay human. She morphs into an adult woman, or a statue of one. She's likely never seen an adult woman before. Bloody tears stain her stone face as she resists the urge to hurt you, but some part of her form wants you dead. Is she lashing out from fear? Finishing you off out of mercy? Whatever the case, her false form starts to crack and split open as her ascension continues. A true god does not look so human. Her torso repairs itself and multiplies upwards. It's the form of a true god spilling out of her. Finally, she's accepting her fate, hoping that something better can come from the darkness that spawned her. You're entirely forgotten to her now. Just the presence of a god is enough to tear you apart. Finally, the god of fear and hunger sheds its human cocoon. For all the humanity you've shown the girl, it was just one day in an entire lifetime of fear and hunger. That is all she knew, and that is what she comes to embody. When it finally notices you, it kinda just kills you. As you die in the depths of the dungeon, a new era starts. The Cruel Age. The first game leaves you to interpret a lot about what the girl becomes, and what the Cruel Age is, but the consequences of leaving your daughter in a cage are pretty clear. Everything that could go wrong, did go wrong. The girl is far from the only one with bad parents, though. Of the 4 protagonists of Fear and Hunger, only one of them had decent parents. In every character's life, we can see another way the girl's parents failed her. Kahara is an outlaw by trade, and he was practically born into it. Parents abandoned him as a kid, and he's been struggling and stealing ever since. Even as an adult, Kahara is still a thief, and he'll still ditch you instead of working together. He may have a heart, but he's used to ignoring that heart to survive. He's been scared and alone for most of his life, and he'll feel that way even if he does escape the dungeon. He might not even escape though, based on the second game. The girl's parents do a lot of things wrong, but their greatest failing is probably just that they weren't there for her. The girl cheers up a lot over the course of the game, just from you staying with her, and from the bit of care you do give to her safety. Without that, she's like Kahara. Scared and alone. Darth seems to fare much better with her parents. She was born into a noble family and was trained as a knight. While that's a lot of pressure for her, she seemed to like the pressure. And hey, at least she has parents. There's just one problem. They want Darth to be something she isn't. When Darth realizes that armies tend to commit war crimes, she wants to quit, but her family forces her to keep going. It might lead her to cut ties with her family entirely. Darth does alright without her parents, but becomes obsessed with her crush Lagarde, who's the only friend she has left. While the girl has much less of a choice, she does share this problem with Darth. Everything the girl goes through is because her parents want her to be something she isn't. A god. It really does take a toll on her. The girl doesn't simp for Lagarde the same way Darth does, but she does obsess a bit over you. Without your party, she'd be alone in the dungeon again, so she'll jump in front of any lethal attacks that hit your party. Brave, but self-destructive. Darth had some problems with her parents, but the worst off is probably Enki. Enki's parents made him fight his sister to the death, which is pretty rude, and then they throw him in a well. The well is full of bugs and other nasty creatures, and he learns Mastery over Vermin as a result. Mastery over Vermin is a spell related to the God of the Depths, and he's responsible for the Dungeons of Fear and Hunger being the way they are. You can see where I'm going with this. Enki wasn't just abused, but put in a similar situation to the girl. Whether Enki sides with his parents or not, the result is him being totally devoid of empathy, among other issues. Perhaps that gave him an understanding of the girl, in a way. More on the second game later, but a book in the second game is written by Enki, and it remarks on the creation of the God of Fear and Hunger. He blames the parenting for her situation as well. The girl has been simultaneously used, abandoned, and abused, but Enki thinks all of it was just a result of her being put in a terrible dungeon. He's almost right. It takes more than just a bad environment to drive you mad. Ragnvaldr was a man familiar with fear and hunger, almost as much as the girl was. His homeland, Oldegard, had gone through generations of famine. One of his ancestors had to eat his own father to cope with the hunger of Oldegard. Later in life, he would find himself forced to explore the continent of Vinland, or Wineland in his tongue, which is named such because he'll drink so much wine, trying to forget how terrifying it is there. But Ragnvaldr didn't turn out like the girl. If he survived the dungeon alone, he's the only one doing something selfless. He devotes his life to ridding the world of monsters. He has his own demons, but he's not completely selfish. What was different for Ragnvaldr? Believe it or not, Ragnvaldr had actual parents. The game doesn't go into detail, just because the parents don't screw anything up. They raise him, they teach him survival skills, and they let him live his life. Ragnvaldr was made stronger by his suffering, because he wasn't alone. The darkness has hurt the girl, but if her parents didn't abandon her, Maybe the god she became would have been more human than she was. The first game only leaves us with mention of the Cruel Age. It isn't until Termina that we learn more about what it actually entails. Apparently, the god of fear and hunger is responsible for modern technology being created, but it's not clear if that was on purpose, or if the technology was even a good thing for humanity. What we do know is that the god of fear and hunger has similar powers to its predecessor. While the god of the depths ruled insects and crows, the god of fear and hunger controls rot and vermin. However, its control over fear and hunger themselves are less clear. Enki only states that the god of fear and hunger used those feelings to motivate people, and that they found inspiration in the suffering. Perhaps it was altering existing suffering to change the result of it, or perhaps it was making things worse to motivate people. Maybe it wasn't even trying to do anything good at all. Maybe it was just provoking suffering. Another author mentions people worshipped this god, and explicitly states that mankind was forced to adapt. It seems that humanity was forced to advance to survive the god, but people still found comfort knowing that their god often felt the same suffering that they did. Unfortunately, this advancement was one in name only. Although the new god was as powerful as its parents hoped, it never changed the things it really wanted to. Termina depicts a world thrust into a more modern era. They have cars, guns, TV, the only important parts of the modern era, but what they don't have is peace or equality. The city shown in Termina may have the physical marks of the modern era, but culturally, the city is the same as it was before the Cruel Age. Of the 14 contestants shown in Termina, at least 7 also have family troubles. The city orphanage and church both seem to participate in human sacrifice. It's all just hidden now. All the god did was turn the medieval dystopia into a modern one. You can force your kid to be strong, but that won't make them a good kid. Even the girl's father comes to regret creating the god. Surviving into the modern era, Lagarde recognizes how pointless it was, even if he still doesn't realize where he went wrong. He thinks it went wrong because the god was created from the old gods, not from humanity's own power. Right or wrong, he's making another god this time, and it might actually be different. Logic is made to fill the exact hole that fear and hunger couldn't. Logic has a human host, but it consists of a network of connected human minds. Or something like that, it's kind of confusing. It's pretty messed up, but it's a people machine. It unites people. Although old gods create monsters and terror within humanity, most of the ruined lives we see are a result of the actions of other humans. Not monsters, not nature, people. Termina is a story of many things, but it's not a story of gods attacking humans. It's a story of humans becoming the monsters and tearing each other apart. You and 13 other contestants will transform given time, but the only way you can delay the transformation is by befriending others. The only thing that truly stops it is the god logic, which unites people against the nightmare. Fear and hunger shows us that hardship happens, suffering happens, but the worst hardships come from isolation and cruelty. Suffering together is better than thriving alone. Well, that's about it for now. As gritty as the games are, they feel a lot nicer the more I think about them, and it was a good bit of thinking. Making this took a lot out of me though. I'll get back to it soon, but if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Making these videos has been a big learning experience. It's taken a while to learn. Let me know in the comments if you have more thoughts. If you want to support me, like, subscribe, whatever. But for now, that's all I got. See ya!